Thank you all for coming. And we're going to have some people coming in, I'm sure a little bit late, but we have a lot of territory that we want to try to cover today. So we're going to start promptly, but thank you all for being here on a Friday, a holiday weekend for some. And Lillian's here. Thank you, Lillian, for being here. If some of you are guests that are maybe outside of FSU, Lillian Garcia-Roig is our chair of the Department of Art. So thanks for being with us. I'm going to switch gears here. I'm going to switch back to our speaker view. And let's see here.
And Liz,
okay.
and I just want to shout out that, hi students, so happy to see all these professional practices, actually out in the world doing so well. I feel like a very happy mama. So I'm excited.
Thank you, Lily. Thanks for being here. That's so great. Okay, so this is what we do for these talks. Just if you haven't been with us for any of our previous talks, that we start with introductions and then we go into our prepared questions. I just want to say really quickly, first of all, I'm Liz DiDonna. I'm the BA director for the Department of Art, and I teach professional practices. And I'm joined with our co-host today, who is Carrie Fee, Dr. Carrie Fee, who is an instructor for art history and the Department of Art. And she's a PhD in art history, is an art historian. And big thank you to Carrie, because I couldn't put this on without her. We're partners in crime on these things. So thank you, Carrie. And our presenters today. So we have a wonderful group. We have Skip Brea and we have Claudia Guerra, and I'm going to introduce each person with some images of their work. Sarita Renee. And unfortunately, I believe that Larry Wayru is not going to be able to join us today. I haven't seen him come in yet, but I got a message from him that he may not be able to join us today, unfortunately. So, but we have our three presenters, and if Larry can join us later, that's great. But we have a lot, like I said, a lot of ground to cover. So, and we're going to have a great discussion with our three presenters. So again, thank you. And thank you to the students. I want to say any of you that are here with us that generated the questions. So the way that we do these presentations, Carrie and I, is that we collect questions from students. So all the questions that we ask come directly from them. They do research on the presenters and they come up with questions that we ask. And that's a part of what we try to do here in the Department of Art and at the university, is to create a culture, a teaching and learning culture of asking questions, because we believe that positive change and innovation can only come from asking good questions. So that's what we center our discussion around. Okay. And with that in mind, anyone who's here, that if you have a question that you want to ask our presenters, you can put that into the chat. We'll reserve those Q&A questions for our live group at the end, around 15 to 20 minutes at the end. So at any point, if you have a question, you can put it into the chat and Carrie will be monitoring those, and we'll do those at the end. Okay. So with that in mind, let's get started before I keep blabbing. So I'm going to open up a PowerPoint, and I'm going to show you a little bit of people's work, so you have kind of a background of the work that they do, and I'll give a bio, so you have a little bit of information about each presenter. Okay. So can everyone see my screen here? Okay, great. So we're going to start with Skip. Okay, and Skip Brea is a new media interdisciplinary artist based in New York City, who received his MFA at Florida State University. Currently, he is a professor of digital media at DePaul University and teaches art history courses about art and the environment. His videos, graphics, animations, and installations examine tech consumerism and data management amongst the masses. Furthermore, involved are many other things that include what we are now calling the metaverse and blockchain technology, from crypto and cyber art to generative art and coded algorithms. He uses virtual information and digital compositions as environmental playgrounds of possibilities and digital commentary. The other side to Skip's work is inspecting, researching, and cognitively thinking about the history of representation, especially throughout the canon of art history, by transforming narratives and mediums with contemporary software. Through image research and data analysis, he creates works of art that embody master type paintings. So welcome, Skip. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And next we have Claudia Guerra, born in Cuba. Claudia Guerra is a New York-based interdisciplinary artist, receiving a bachelor's degree in fine arts from Florida State University in 2020. She now works as a creator for VaynerX by day and in her studio by night. Claudia uses her work to explore the nuance of gender and the paradigm of inherited womanhood through themes of religion, Catholicism and Santeria, iconography and mortality. She undermines the inextricable worlds. As the mediums and motifs she uses evolve alongside her, so does her craft and relationship with her art practice. She looks at anything from the mundane to the ethereal for inspiration, as well as experimenting with different materials to convey visual and conceptual complexity within her work. All right, thank you, Claudia. And then we have Sarita Renee. Sarita is a business consultant, business professor, management and leadership researcher, and visual artist. She holds an MFA in studio art from FSU, an MBA, and is currently working on a PhD in organizational leadership with an emphasis in business management and leadership development. Realizing her ability to bridge the gap between innovation and business strategy through pedagogy and consultation, she launched her boutique-style leadership, education, and business consultancy firm, Educated Business Design, LLC. She leads all of her courses and consultative work with an unconventional approach guided by human empathy, creative thinking, experience design, and business strategy. Consultative projects with organizations include Voice and Visibility Women's Summit, Maryland Institute College of Art, Microsoft Game Studio, Cirque du Soleil, and others. She is currently a professor teaching creative business courses at Ringling College of Art and Design in the business program. So thank you for being here, Sarita. All right, I'm going to stop sharing here. And we're going to get right into the questions since we have so many to get to today. We're going to try to cover as much ground as possible. And we're going to start with some questions for everyone. So the questions that I ask at the beginning will be for everyone to answer. And then around midway, we'll skip to some specific questions that the students generated that said, I want to ask Skip this question. I want to ask Sarita. I want to ask Claudia. Okay, so we'll start with general questions. And the first one I have, which kind of is a great one to start with because it kind of gives us a little bit more of a background and an understanding of where you came from and then how that kind of led to where you are now. Okay, so and then whoever wants to start us off, what did you study in school? We know a little bit from the bio, kind of your background, but what are some of the things that you studied in school? And then how did that lead to what you're doing after graduation? What was it like to find opportunities after graduation? Was it hard? Did you have to have help? So kind of giving us a little bit of a background of what school was like and then what it led to after that. So whoever would like to go first. Skip.
I can jump in. So in undergrad, I was a studio art and literature double. But because I was working with technology and there wasn't a design program or anything that had to do with tech, I started off as a painter. So that's where the more art history side and the more painterly like work came from. I started off composing those digital collages as paintings. And then as time went on, I ended up going abroad to do the New York Arts program. Shameless plug, I'm on the board. To do the New York Arts program where I studied and worked under two professional artists that are currently in the game. and I also worked for a design firm. That's where I got to see if I wanted to be an artist or I wanted to be a designer. So I was working at both things, and I was like, you know what? I do not want to be a designer. I don't want to work for other people. All I want to do is just be an artist and work for myself. So that's when I started aiming my trajectory to be more of an artist than like going to work for a design firm. Studio art and literature double. Yeah, and then from that, after I got a degree, I ended up teaching, which is like goes into my interest of being a professor. I did the Ephraimson, it was like a post-bachelorette thing where I taught intro to painting and I taught intro to drawing for a year. And that sort of catapulted me into graduate school.
All right.
I'll go ahead and go next if that's all right.
Yeah, please.
So I got an undergrad, a bachelor's in business of art and design, and it was this idea that this bridging of these two worlds of creativity and business. And after that program, I realized, okay, this is something. There's something there that's very interesting to me. I think my whole life's theme has been this idea of balance. So I'm bicultural, I'm Black and Puerto Rican. There's a balance there. I've always been interested in photography and painting, but I can't paint. So I always try to bridge that gap in there. And similarly to business and art. Or creativity and innovation, and how do I bridge that? So I knew I was going to get a master's degree. And at the time I could not find a master's degree that gave me enough creative freedom and enough business acumen and knowledge. And so I knew I was going to pursue 2 terminal degrees within those 2 fields. So I got an MFA from Florida State University, and it was an amazing experience. I think another aspect of that was that it was an interdisciplinary program, which allowed me to bridge other people's perspectives and let it influence my art. And then directly after that, perhaps a year after, I knew that I was going to get an MBA. I knew that that was a terminal degree in business. And so I pursued that as well. It's interesting, in my MFA, I was kind of viewed as the business person. And in my MBA, I was kind of viewed as the artist. So that was a really cool perspective. And then 1 year after my MBA, I said, man, let's go ahead and get this trinity. Let's just tie this all up with an MFA, an MBA, and the Don Dada of, so I pursued a PhD in organizational leadership with an emphasis in business management. And I've been able to really utilize some creative aspects and influence some of my colleagues and peers in the PhD program to, if we're going to do something, it should be accurate, but it should be, visually compelling and engaging as well. And so that's how that kind of went down. So I'm really happy in that path. And then the next question was, what was it like finding opportunities after graduation? I think one thing that I want to tell students, and if you're bold and you want to turn on your video, let's do this, let's talk about it. One of the things that I would encourage you to do is to recognize that this is not a drill. The academic career is not a drill. This is where you're supposed to be, thinking and strategizing and planning and organizing these different opportunities. A lot of people wait till they're done to then start this idea of networking and this idea of planning and strategizing on their moves. And so I encourage you right now to just reach out to people that admire you. And I'm gonna tell you why. You have the opportunity to use and leverage the name of your school. You go to an amazing institution, Florida State University. You can reach out to any professional and stroke their ego a little bit by saying, look, I'm really interested in what you're doing. And I hope that, I would love to connect. I'm a student at FSU. I'm doing some research on contemporary artists, so-and-so, Blase Skippy, and, make it happen. So I'm just want to throw that in there to set the tone and the stage of my views on that. And I think I went off a little bit on that question, but yes, that's what I have.
That was great, Sarita. Thank you. And Claudia?
I had to mute, sorry. So I took a different approach than Sarita and Skip. I got my BFA, but after that, I didn't pursue further education. So I really, when I was in the BFA program, I really immersed myself in, I would say, painting and more painting than photography, because it was really where I was leaning towards, especially within academia. And I had incredible professors like Lillian and Mark who really helped me. And photography was something that I did. I took a darkroom class and things like that. But I really wanted to expand as an artist as much as possible. And I think now more so than ever, I feel that I don't really limit myself to one medium. And not saying that if artists choose to be in one medium that's limiting, but that's how I feel. Like, I just consider myself a multimedia artist. Like, sometimes I might want to do airbrushing or drawing or oil pastel or painting. So it really is whatever calls my attention. My art practice after I graduated, I would say suffered a little bit, because once you're in an institution that caters to creativity and you have a space to work, and it comes so easy and naturally, once you leave that, it's very challenging. And I went back home to Miami, and I went to live with my parents, and so I had a small room. There wasn't really a lot of space for me to paint, especially at the scale I wanted. It was very difficult, and so I think that's what leaned me more into the realm of drawing in a sketchbook or drawing on paper, and really not letting myself feel like I'm not making actual work because it's not on a canvas. I don't think you should feel limited by your materials either. um, just make work, and at the pace that feels natural, because you don't want to burn yourself out for the sake of productivity, which is something that I felt the pressure of. Um, but after graduation, looking for work, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't really want to take a professor or academic approach. And so the natural path that I was taking was something creative. I knew I didn't want to work an office job per se, but I wanted to do something that was at least creatively inclined. And so it was a really long and arduous process to find a job, but I finally landed one. And this was the job I have now, was actually the only job that reached out to me. It was the only place that was like, we're interested. And so I had to do a test to show my creative abilities. And so then they interviewed me and I got the job. And so now I do like graphic design, copywriting, and like video work. So it's been really challenging because it pushes me to think conceptually as an artist, but also within the framework of something that might not be traditionally what I would work in. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, actually, Claudia, that's great, because what you were saying about what the kind of shift that you had to do after graduation leads right into the next question that students had, which maybe we could start with you if it's okay, since you're already kind of on that topic about the major obstacles that you had to overcome to get to where you are today. Could you talk a little bit more about some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome from the time of graduation to now?
Definitely. So I
Yeah.
would say square footage was my biggest obstacle in terms of creating, because Lillian knows this, I like to paint and I like to paint big. And so I was like, this is really challenging. Maybe I could paint smaller. And then I started drawing more on paper and just really getting even copy paper, which is considerably inexpensive of a material. And so I would just do a bunch of studies, and in my living room floor, it didn't really matter. But then there were also obstacles such as mental health, and like those days where if I was going through a depressive episode and I really didn't feel inclined to create or make anything because everything felt taxing, that was another hurdle that I still face today, despite my environment. That's something, that follows us. But I would say that sometimes obstacles, not that I want to I don't want to have the toxic positivity mindset, because I think that is illogical. But if, let's say, you're someone who works really big, like I am and was, you're like, what could I do to still have an art practice? And so, for example, now I really work a lot on my iPad, which Lillian kind of introduced me to this idea of like composing things on your iPad. And that's such a good tool. And I actually have been making a lot of digital collages, which feel so accessible and so easy for me to do, because after a long day of work, the last thing maybe I want to do is set up and be like painting or, and so I'll like lay in bed and it's like 2 a.m. and I'm like this on my iPad drawing. And so I think certain obstacles, when you're called to create, you will find a way, if that makes sense. Like my reason for making art isn't from a productivity standpoint, it's from the need inside me to create art and because I have something to say. And so when you feel that inclined, you will find a way to create within whatever medium. But I would also really encourage students to just listen to what they need, because outside of art practice, your life is going to change and there might be times where you're not called to make so much art or where you can't, and allow yourself to be human and to just let things happen, because we can't always be at 100. And yeah.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you so much. Skip or Sarita?
I'll go ahead then. Obstacles that I had to overcome to get to where I am today. This could go in so many different directions. I mean, we could go that DEI situation. I mean, I could take it anywhere. But I think I'll go off of what Claudia said. It's very interesting having an art studio and then going away and then you don't have an art studio anymore, right? So that was something that happened to me as far as just where do I do my art? And at the time I was using a lot of spray paint and, these apparatus to kind of hold my glass up, and it was messy. So I had to think about other ways to kind of express something else. So I really got into these micro views, and I bought an amazing microscope and an attachment for my camera, and I started to do tiny miniature work. It's not on the slides that Liz provided, but I recently did a really cool, it's called Anxiously Ignited, and it had to do with anxiety reducing herbs kind of melted into this to the small little glass. And yeah, and it's amazing. I was like, oh my God, this is a whole different world in this tiny world where, it looks like paint and I still can use paint, but on a tiny level. So that was one of the obstacles. I guess I would frame it to just an area of opportunity. And so I'm trying to look at things like, hey, this looks like a hurdle, but it may be presenting a new opportunity coming up. Other obstacles as far as getting into business or getting into teaching. I'm Black Puerto Rican with what some people say is an accent. I don't hear it, but some say that that's true. I'm not sure. So, there were some challenges in that area. The business world seems to be very different at its core from the art world of inclusivity and it's a little bit more rigid. So there were some challenges in there, but again, as Claudia mentioned, not to have a mindset of a negative outview, but I kind of thrive on things like that. I like to feel that I've overcome something. It makes me feel, fragile, not like a flower, as you guys know, but like a bomb, like, okay, let's ignite this then. So thank you.
Yeah, that comes through in the logo of your business, right? That's part of your logo that we showed during the slides. Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Skip, how about you?
So I graduated during the pandemic. I guess that would be my biggest obstacle of all. So moving across state, right? Like going from Florida to New York with no plans because everything was shut down. So I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna be an artist. I packed everything in my car, my apartment and my studio in a 4-door little car. And I just drove across the country. And this is where I really, really want to highlight what a network's connections and community can do for obstacles or what may seem as obstacles. So I didn't have a studio. I wasn't making work because all my work, like it was just post like graduate thesis. I was burnt out. I was like exhausted. I didn't want to create anymore, especially with like the pressures from the pandemic. But I was like, you know what? I need to work on something. So I started working on what I consider like the other half of my practice. And I asked my mentor because she spends like most of her time from August to December, and then from February to May in New York, and then she leaves to Vermont. It's because she has another house in Vermont. So I was like, for the summer, can I use your studio? And she gave me a little corner in her studio, and I just started working for the entire summer. And the work that I did that summer ended up getting me into 3 group shows. And in those 3 group shows, I sold all my work and I didn't have to work in New York for a year. So, right, it was living to like my very, very last dollar. But it showed me like if I want to pursue art full time, it is totally a possibility. And I think that was the biggest like light switch. It was, you don't have to have a job or a full-time job in order to like supply your art. Because usually what people find out is that they create, and then like they have some shows, something doesn't sell, then they have to go find a job to supplement, to continue working and to continue painting. But I was like, I'm not gonna depend on my job in order to continue my practice. And so I worked as like I was an achievement coach for this company called One River. And what I did was I helped seniors get into art university and art colleges by going over their portfolios and helping them sort of create and put together all of the work that they created through high school, so that they can get into the college that they wanted to. Sometimes I did it for free. Sometimes I did it for pay. But it only took up like 10 hours of my week. And then the rest of the time, it was just in the studio, going to work and trying to see what led to, like one thing led to another. So what I would say is just do it. Like just do something, because you never know what you do. It's always a chain of reaction. You never know who's going to show up to that group show. You never know who's going to see your work. You never know what collection you're going to go into. And that is what keeps sort of the chain moving and the party going.
All right, thank you, thank you. Okay, so the next question I think that we're going to go with is, how do you hold yourself accountable when it comes to your individual practice of art, especially when considering busy schedules and other jobs? How do you stay inspired in a creative rut? Who wants to jump on that one?
I'll jump right in since I'm already here. How do you hold yourself accountable? Schedule. You have to schedule studio time. It is a must. It is a must, 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 must. Like, let's say you plan out your week and you have a 6-day week out of the 7. You got to make sure that at least 2 of those days are completely dedicated to studio time. Or if it's not 2 full days, you at least do 2 hours where you go every day to the studio. And those little measly 2 hours, they show up. They add up, they show up. And even if you go to the studio and do nothing, even if you go to the studio and just stare at a painting, flip through a book, I promise you it's all of those little things that end up paying off in the long run. Another thing would be carry one of these. Always have a little notebook with you where you're jotting down things when you're talking to people, having those studio visits, even after your BFA or your MFA, continue having those critiques, because that does count as studio time and that does count as holding yourself accountable, whether it's virtual Zoom critiques, whether it is, you can get people from your initial community, whether it's people who were in your BFA program that you've lost contact with, get back in contact with them and continue having that sort of open discourse, not just about your work, but about other people's work as well.
Absolutely.
I'll go ahead. Mine would be a bit of a different situation at the time, but similarly to Skip, I time schedule everything. This is one of 3 boards in my room, and so just keeping everything visual and trying to keep track of how, what amount of time do I invest in, currently in my PhD or in my business, the development, or I take time to be inspired by creative things and creative art still. There's an annual faculty exhibition each year. So I make sure that, through my summer, I plan for that and try to create something new each time for that. If I don't capitalize on any other exhibition at the moment, at least, try to capitalize on that one. So I think by nature, I'm a planner. And so it's not too difficult for me to say, look, if it doesn't go into the book, it's not real, it's not happening. So I'm a big advocate of keep everything just aligned and on schedule. And yes, I have another notebook on here for just things and ideas and, any additional notes. So I think that's the way that I kind of function on that. I am very conscientious to always look for resources or news within art, within business, within leadership. Those are my 3 buckets. And so I try to make sure to always stay ahead of the game, or at least with any contemporary, news or technologies or anything that's coming out, trends within those areas.
I agree with Skip and Sarita 100%. Like, scheduling makes all of the difference, and you don't have to have a breakdown, an hourly breakdown of your schedule, but as long as you're like an hour of art consumption today or 2 hours of drawing today. Like, I made an Instagram account solely for art. I only follow artists, and that has made all the difference because it allows me to consume art in a really natural feed-like way. And also I can make some time on the side to look at books or research art from centuries ago, whatever it may be. I'm not as diligent or committed as Sarita and Skip, but I'm working towards it. So take it from me, the scheduling and having a calendar helps so much, especially if you're trying to incorporate different things. Like, I am trying to learn the bass right now. So it's also very important for me to be like an hour of bass a night, 2 hours of drawing a night. So at least I have that time allocated to those things.
Can I just jump in really quickly to say one more thing? Because Claudia just it brought it up to my mind. I've been studying a lot of technology, and minimizing the time that you spend on social media is super, super, super key. And if there's anything that you want to research or that you could read one book, and it's called Digital Minimalism. If you limit yourself to 2 hours to 3 hours a week on social media, all this saying, I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to that, you'd be surprised how much time you do have just cutting or limiting your social media usage.
Awesome. That's great. Great advice. Okay, so let's see, we might have time for more general questions, but let's try this one. What is the best piece of advice you have for artists who are looking to jumpstart their careers, specifically in the midst of an ongoing pandemic? So have you done anything differently? Have you shifted some of your practice because of the pandemic? And what advice would you give?
I'll go ahead. I think a piece of advice for artists who are looking to jumpstart their careers, I think just artists and professionals overall, I think for artists recognizing, and I know there's this fine line from artists feeling like I'm an artist, but at the end of the day, you are the product, you're the brand, you are the business at the end of the day, just keeping that mentality. And then, so how do we capitalize on this pandemic situation? I have been able to meet with more people and more professionals, even across the world, because it's so normal now to invite somebody on a Zoom call. Anytime that I'm invited to anywhere, I mean, I saw these names, Skip, Claudia, I was like, let me look them up, let me link up, let me collect some people and networks. I mean, this is and so my mentality is always on that side. As I mentioned previously, while I was at FSU, I reached out while we were doing some contemporary research on artists. I reached out to a couple people that I highly admire. One of them was, I highly admire Kim Kiever. We had a hashtag Kiever Fever. I love the dude. He literally, we made a hashtag for him. Tanae was part of that, a big part of that. And I reached out to him. I'm like, look, I'm doing research and you're it. You're the man. Like, I love what you're doing. And I would love to have some time to speak with you. Listen, the dude, not only was he flattered, right, but he sent me information through the mail that was not available online. We continued this situation of back and forth. Literally, he is my friend to this day. I've met him at Art Basel twice. He just texted me saying, hey, when are you coming? He moved from New York to Miami. He's like, when are you coming down? I want you to see my new studio. And that came from me reaching out to somebody that I said, look, I admire what you're doing. So I really encourage for you to say, you're in your academic careers, but it is not a drill. This is like the real thing right now, hoping that you are setting the plays and setting the moves to come out of college and be able to hit the ground running. You should just be building your network and your database of people. Your database should be so thick and so ridiculous that if you don't have a job, you should not have a job for more than 3 weeks, because you can reach out to so many people and look, like, listen, keep me in mind. This is my resume. Push me through to somebody, XYZ. Like, this is the real deal. This is not a drill. So right now, as you're doing, yes, it's fun to be on social media. Yes, it's fun to hit that party. But are you doing the work that you need to be doing to set yourself up for success as soon as you graduate? So my advice is, take this academic career as real preparation for your career, not waiting till you graduate to then be like, what do I do now? Like, have a plan, put that in action. It can happen, I promise you. So thank you.
All right, Skip, Claudia, what do you think?
I'll go ahead. The question was, how are we adjusting throughout the pandemic, right?
Yeah, anything specific that you're doing differently?
What Sarita said 100% through and through, and especially before about networking, it is so crucial to reach out to people. And I think collectively we are afraid of rejection, but the worst that someone can tell you is, no, I'm sorry, I don't have time, no, period, or they don't answer. But just you trying, you might create an incredible connection. And you really, I think this put things into perspective of how much we crave collectivity and community. And I think that is such an important fundamental, aside from just networking, having a solid group of artists around you who can critique your work or that inspire you, or just, it is so crucial. And I think the pandemic really made me reshift my focus and allowed me to just reach out to people, because we all at the end of the day want that human connection. And especially as artists, we understand what one another goes through, even if we're not in the same sector of art. We collectively understand what it's like. And I think I yearned and I sought out a community as a result of the pandemic.
Yeah, I want to sort of follow up both sentiments of Sarita and Claudia. One, nobody's judging you, nobody's looking, nobody is thinking twice unless you make them think twice. And if they're thinking, you're doing a good job. It is okay to have haters. That is fine. They make the world go round. They give you more likes. They give you more views. That is okay. Also, the biggest piece of advice I would say is follow through always with your mentors, with your communities, stay in contact. Don't just graduate and then stop talking to the people who helped you throughout those 4 years. Those are your people that are behind you through and through 100% of the way whether you depart from the art scene or stay in the art scene, they're gonna have your back. They're gonna be your backbone. Those are the people that really start the foundation for your community and your network. They have their connections are your connections. Even if those connections don't work out, you know that they'll at least go to bat for you 100% of the time. Be intentional about your meetings, right? Don't show up 15 minutes late, 30 minutes late, right? People remember that. Right? You want to be as professional as possible, right? As Sarita is saying, right? Everything starts now. Everything starts today. Actually, it started yesterday. Actually, it started like 3 years ago if you're a senior, right? So be super, super, super intentional.
All right, perfect. I think we got through our general questions. Why don't we skip now to the more specific ones that students specifically were asking each one of you. And so what I'll do is I'll go around to each person, I'll ask a question, and we'll just keep going around until we run out of time. Okay. Like I said, we have tons of questions here. So I think, Claudia, if it's okay with you, we'll start with you. And the first question I want to ask you is, comes from a student. Do you have a habit of taking your camera everywhere with you and shooting all the time whenever the feeling strikes? How do you approach staying consistent and motivated when it comes to shooting?
That's a great question, because I think carrying equipment on you, especially a camera, I do really recommend having a sketchbook on you like Skip suggested, but a camera is heavier, bulkier, is like, even if you have the most minimal of cameras. So because my work when I was living in South Florida revolved mostly around my family and self-portraiture, it was usually in my house that I photographed. And so I would like to carry a camera around with me so I can capture certain things that I saw. But I did find it a bit of a burden to carry such a big camera. So I ended up buying this really crappy $60 Canon camera. I think it's actually used for like sports or like hiking, things like that. And that was something that has allowed me to really focus on composition and subject matter, because I'm letting go of this idea of like high quality, high tech photographs, because you can take a photo on a phone and it can be a fantastic photo, and you shouldn't diminish that because it was on a cell phone. So I think that's another like topic of like elitism that can feel natural in the art world with like materials. So I would say, even if you just have your camera phone on you, take pictures all the time. I keep the small camera on me, so I have something that's only for photography, not like a phone and all of these things, but just take photos, because even if it's not something that you're going to use for your photography merit, it could be good practice to align composition, look at colors, lighting, like everything is a tool and an opportunity to grow. So yeah, try to keep, if you're a photographer, try to have something on you at all times, because you might see something that really captivates your attention and you might feel left with regret for not taking a photo of it. Especially if you're a multidisciplinary artist like I am. I have so many photos on my phone that transfer over into still lives or like collages or things like that, that I'm so grateful that I took photos of. So always have some material on you so you can create at any given time.
All right, thank you, Claudia. Okay, so next question, I'll go to Sarita next. Sarita, and this is a great question. I'm so glad that one of the students asked it, because I'd like to know this myself. I'm quite curious. So in teaching creative business courses, and we had a number of questions about teaching, by the way. And so, you know, there's a big hand here with you all in teaching, but I'm glad we're talking about this. In teaching creative business courses, do you find that there's ever a clash between artistic freedom and corporate structures?
That's an interesting question, and I think in the community of where I'm teaching, there would not be, but definitely when it's translated into the world and into jobs, there may be. That's why I was so I was so adamant about understanding the artist and the artist's mind, and then understanding the business and the business thinking and that logical, process. In teaching the business courses, I'm teaching individuals that are interested in business but have a creative inclination. I mean, so in the classroom there isn't really that barrier. However, we do talk to students that have graduated, and oftentimes they say, oh wow, okay, unless you're going into a creative company, well, you're talking about Pixar, they understand this merge and this bridge between innovation and creativity and design and then business. And that's essentially what we're trying to create in my program of Business of Art and Design. We want to create business professionals that completely understand the artists to eliminate that barrier between that business structure and the artist, and how do they then collaborate in a more seamless way. So I would say that in teaching it, not so much, but I have seen situations where in practice out there in the real world, they do come, there tends to be a clash unless those business professionals really comprehend what the artists are doing. A lot of the creativity that we're teaching these students too is understanding the design thinking process. So design as an actual mindset rather than an art, so that they are able to then understand the artist that they manage or work with, or and so on and so forth. So yes.
All right, thank you. And we're kind of skipping topics around a little bit, so I'm trying to think here. Okay, I'm going to do this one. Skip, I'm going to ask, there's another question I want to ask you, but I'm going to skip to this one since we're on this subject. Skip, since you are a professor now, what sort of advice do you give your own students?
Some advice that I give to my own students are, since I teach intro, but I also teach advanced. So I have like the gambit of freshmen to seniors. So to the young ones, like the first and second years, I say to stop trying to fulfill your parents' dreams and go for yours. You're the one pouring blood, sweat, and tears into this degree, not them, right? So I have a lot of international students where, they come from a background that's very, very strict, and they're like, oh, I want to be an artist, but I have to study econ. And I'm like, cool, do both, right? Like, double majoring exists for a reason. Don't just put your dreams and your passion to the back burner just for your parents, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's getting the degree, not them. And I know parents are parents. If you're happy, they'll be happy, and you'll find a way to make it work, regardless whether they're happy with your decision or not. And this sort of goes back to what I was saying earlier to the older ones, right? Time management, honesty, and love are the keys to everything. The world outside of college doesn't stop for anyone. So be timely, be purposeful with everything you do, because that is what goes back around, right? Be a student as you would be a professional. You want to be on time. You want to make sure that everything is nice and scheduled. You want to be sure that you're respectable, that you're loving, because word travels. The grapevine is very, 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 very long, and you don't know who knows each other. Yeah.
All right. Next question is for Claudia. And I didn't include some of these images. So Claudia, you might need to get us all up to speed a little bit if we didn't go to your website. But I'm curious about this too. So there's a series that you did that's on your website called the Pit Stop. And so a student wanted to know, how do you choose what pieces of writing to include and what topics to discuss? So if you could talk a little bit about that project, and then, is writing another passion of yours, and how do you relate your writing to your visual art?
I was not expecting, when I saw the question about the pit stop, I was gobsmacked. But that actually, I have always loved writing. For me, I love art in all capacities: reading, writing, visual art, theater art, like all of it, I feel is so enthralling and just incredible. And when the pandemic started, I think like many people, I went through a really dramatic change. I think my whole world was shaken up because I started realizing that a lot of the things that I believed, whether it was in my friendships or my day-to-day life or in certain systems, I was they weren't, it wasn't the case. It wasn't as it seemed. And I was kind of tired of pretending that I was okay, or that I didn't have things to say, or that what I was feeling was exclusive to my experience, or that I just wanted to feel that community and that collective again. So I decided to publish some of the things that I had written about, whether it was my depression or how I viewed certain things. And I was like, whether one person or no people read this, like it at least will exist out there and someone can find solace in it. And so I think I decide to write about what moves me the most. So it usually will start with like, for example, I know I wrote a piece about the songs that have like completely transformed my life. And so those are things that move me to tears. Like I am someone who is very emotional in general, but especially about art. I can look at a painting and cry, or listen to a song and cry. Same thing with a film. And when I feel that compelled and that moved by something, I want to share it. And for a while in the pandemic, I felt so alone. I felt like a lot of the friendships I had were very surface level. A lot of the connections I had, because of this realm of social media, you only matter to people in a very shallow way. And I was feeling that so intensely. And I was reading so much at the time and consuming so much that I felt like I needed an outlet to really let this outpour of emotions exist in a place that wasn't inside my mind or on my own. So I would say it comes from this deep desire to connect with people and for community, and just, again, back to being an artist, needing an outlet for these feelings and these thoughts.
All right, thank you. And if I can interject real quick, so we're coming up on 1 o'clock and we're gonna end today at 1:30. So if, as we're talking about these different topics, if there's a question that you all have that are here today and you want to ask it, go ahead and throw that in the chat so we make sure that we try to get to those today. Please do so at any point. But my next question is for Sarita. And I love this question. So in your teaching practice, in your experience as a professor, how have you grown in your own art, in your own art making, being a teacher and working with other creative minds? How has that kind of fed into your own art making?
I feel that it is such a privilege to work with brand new creative minds every single semester. And I'm honestly, I would be lying if I would say that these students literally don't inspire me to the core. You know, we do have a business major, but I also have courses with minors. So I have minors from illustration, computer animation, photography, creative writing, all these other people. And I make it a point to understand what their art is prior to us getting into, the business management and leadership development and planning and organizing, SWOT analysis and all these other things. And so I am inspired by these students, the work that they do, the way that they think. It's such a privilege, a delicate privilege at that, to be able to just collaborate with these beautiful human beings. So that inspires me. Just currently in just this season of life, having a full-time job and pursuing a PhD, I cannot say that I have been able to maximize my artistic voice as much as I would like, but it's just for a season. Sometimes we have to prioritize some things just to move to that next level of life or that next season of life. So I would say that teaching has definitely inspired me in my own creative voice, just by being around just what I call just these creative geniuses. To me, I just I learn a lot from them. I think it's a back and forth. They learned some business things from me. I learned some artistic things from them, and it's a beautiful combination, I would say. Thank you.
Love that. Love that. All right, Skip. So here's the other question I wanted to ask you. So why, and you've talked a little bit about this, but maybe you could talk a little bit more. Why did you decide to pursue an MFA? And do you have any advice for someone interested in graduate school?
That's a great question. So I sort of wrote out these answers a little bit beforehand, but I decided to pursue an MFA because I knew at the end of the road where I wanted to end up was in academia. I have a passion for helping the youth follow their dreams. That's why I was an achievement coach. That's why sometimes I did pro bono work where I worked for free and helped my friends' kids get into college and all that other fun stuff. But this also ties into what Lauren asked. It's like, how do you refill your cup? Which, like, knowing and working underneath professors who are artists, knowing that they get summers off and a little bit of a chunk on winters, right? Those are like those reset moments that I knew that I wanted later in life. So that's why I wanted to get an MFA, because I knew I wanted to be a professor in the long run, even if it was just adjuncting or part-time. I'm lucky enough and privileged enough to get a full-time, so I'm really, really happy about that. But if I had to give any advice about graduate school, is to make sure that you do thorough research on any institution that you'll be applying to, whether it's searching who are the current faculty, or what are some extra things that the universities can offer, such as trips abroad, going to art fairs like the Art Basel or Armory or Prospect, spending a semester at another partnering college. There's a lot out there, so just do thorough research. The reason why I ended up going to Florida State was because I ended up researching the faculty and I saw that Lillian and Carrie were there. And my interest in painting and seeing how prolific they were in painting and how amazing their careers have been was just a no-brainer for me.
So any additional advice that you would give for somebody that was thinking about graduate school?
Yeah, to do research. You have to do research and look at who the faculty is wherever you want to go, because those are the faculty that you're going to be working very, very closely with. That's the faculty that's going to make up your committee. Those are the faculty that you're going to have crits with. Don't even worry about the incoming cohort. That's going to merge whether you want to or not, right? It's all about the faculty and the environment, right? Tallahassee was an amazing place for me because I was coming from a place that was cold 24/7. Like, it's still cold right now. So, right, like the weather was a little bit of sort of a guiding point, but really it was faculty. Make sure you research the school and be intentional about like why you want to work with that faculty.
All right. So why don't we go to that, Skip, since you mentioned Lauren's question, why don't we open that up to everybody? So if you didn't see this in the chat, let me go back to it. So I'll ask Claudia and Sarita, how do you refill your cup in any specific, oh, I'm sorry. The first question is, how do you refill your cup? Let's do that one first. And then the second one is any specific networking tips, and we'll ask everybody that one too. So first, how do you refill your cup? Love that question, Lauren. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and answer that. I personally, I think it is underestimated how valuable doing nothing is. I think we move at such a fast pace, especially in this day and age with just the amount of things that we consume. I think I read an article that was that within just our morning, the first few hours of us being awake, we consume more than some people used to in their whole lifetimes. And so I really value, when I was living in Florida, I would go outside, sit in the grass, and just let the sun hit me. Like, I would do nothing. And that is, to me, the most refreshing thing, because that moment of stillness really allows me to breathe and just recenter myself and kind of reconnect with my mind and my body almost. And I'm not constantly stimulated because I really do make it a point to just be. And that really does give me that refresh that I always need.
Great. Sarita, how about you?
I want to just emphasize what Skip and both Claudia mentioned. There's so much stimuli in the world every day. And as you mentioned, I try to be intentional about not picking up my phone the first thing that I do. And I have to actually be conscious about saying like, wait a minute, let me open for me, and this is just specific to me, let me open my Bible app. What's the scripture for today? As similar to Claudia, sometimes I just go to my backyard and like literally just let the sun hit me just for a few moments. I'm big on taking my nighttime shower and, moisturizing time to put a podcast that's inspirational to me. So I have it playing throughout the time that I'm just like getting myself ready for nighttime and kind of decompressing for the day. It's really difficult. I almost have to also put that type of stuff in my planner so that it's official. Like, let me pay myself to, let me make sure that that's just as important. Similar to money, I pay my savings account just like it's a bill, because I got to pay me first. And it's the same exact concept with just loving on ourselves and just being like, listen, you're the most important project you'll ever work on in your entire life. So taking it to that priority and that the seriousness and the caliber of the importance of it is just as crucial as your career or any other thing that you invest time in. It's unfortunate to see your phone tell you, update, this how many hours you spent online this week. Ew, like get it together, so just take it into consideration that's all that time could have been on self-love, or it could have been on planning, or it could have been, and I'm not saying, stay away from social media. It's easier for me to say. I grew up in a non-social media and then transition. I was one of those early millennials transition to social media. So I can more than maybe Gen Z detach myself from it and say, wait a minute, this is consuming my mind and it's choosing how I want to feel today, and so just taking that time to choose how you want to feel in the morning first before you let your feed tell you how you're going to feel. So.
All right. So the other part of Lauren's question was specifically about networking. Any networking tips that you can give to people? That's for everybody.
I can jump in because I had a similar question that you present, and it goes along the lines of how do you search for opportunities and how do you find these opportunities? All of the opportunities that I've had have come from staying vigilant and continuing to foster relationships, not only in person, but online through all platforms, right? Whether it sounds counterintuitive that I say like limit your social media, but right, I'm on social media to network, right? So it's not only just Facebook or Instagram or TikTok nowadays, right? So those are those things that's the reason why I use social media. But not just social media, but in person. So making sure that you're going to openings, making sure that you're going to events, making sure that you're in contact with the gallery that's in your initial community. If you're in Tallahassee, make sure you stop by 621. Make sure you stop by FSU's gallery or the BFA's gallery, right? Those are the moments and those are the people that you want to talk to. Never burn a bridge or come off as arrogant in a room full of people you don't know. You never know who can help, and you never know who you could help in the incoming endeavors. All in all, in my experience, building a network and giving to your community will take you further than cold calls and spamming emails.
Well said.
I'll go ahead and add to that. I think, and just from a bit of a slightly different perspective, but it all comes together. I would have and I know this sounds such a business word, but have your elevator pitch ready. That just means at the end of the day, just can you say what you do, your mission and your vision in a couple sentences, condensed and direct, and, have your LinkedIn ready, have your business card with your portfolio, a link, QR code, whatever the case may be. Attend any event. You might think like, oh, I don't really. No, attend the event. Walk up to people, shake their hands, look them in the eyes, tell them, hey, I want you to really remember me. I'd love to connect on this LinkedIn platform. Whatever the case is, I think it's just you can't expect that everything is just going to fall in your lap. You got to put in some work, a little bit of legwork in there, and it'll return. Your return on investment will certainly be one to benefit you in the future.
I couldn't agree more. And just take advantage of every opportunity. I live in New York now, so I'm fortunate enough where this is a city where things happen. And so just make sure that you're always kind to people, that you treat people with respect, because like Skip said, don't be arrogant. You never know who you're going to meet, and not just as a point of networking and connection, but just because as a human being, it's good to be kind. And then after you meet people, if you're interested to learn more about them, or you think that there could be a further connection, whether it's, business wise or friendship wise or in any capacity, follow up on social media or LinkedIn. Or if you don't want to take the social media route, ask them for their email or their phone number. Don't be afraid to be bold and ask.
And I'd like to add to this really quickly, and I think it's imperative just as human beings, that there is a fine line between arrogance and confidence. And so just really understanding where that fine line is, and then mixing that always and forever with just showering it with humility. And just know, who you are at the end of the day, when no one's looking to praise you or reprimand you, right? And just exploring that line. Be confident, because at the end of the day, if you're not rooting for you, trust me, a lot of people out there will not be, right? So you're gonna have to just wear that confidence, but as they've mentioned as well, make sure that is with humility, and that doesn't cross into arrogance.
I want to piggyback quickly on top of that, is that there's also a thin line between persistence and annoyance, right? Don't be afraid to be persistent, because you're gonna think you're coming off as annoying, right? Persistence is key, but also being a little too, right? So knowing the balance.
All right. And speaking of balance, another question. I'm just going to go right into the general Q&A. So again, if anyone has a question, don't be shy, put it into the chat and we'll ask your question. But this is back from Lauren Baker, by the way. Thank you so much for being here. She's our third co-host, and a lot of the questions came from her students in success strategies. So thank you, Lauren. So Lauren asked, again, question for everyone. Do you believe in a work-life balance? I love that you said believe. Do you believe in it? Does it exist? And is your artistic practice something you see as separate from that? So anyone want to chime in?
I'll go ahead. Listen, work-life balance is everything. I mean, and again, a balance of, ego and humility, a balance of everything is trying to find some type of equilibrium, which will not stay there for a very long time, but being conscientious of it is important. Again, you're the most important project you'll ever work on. So it is imperative that you do have a balance within life. And I say that preaching to myself at the time, but it's just the season that I'm in right now with this PhD. And at times I can't reach that work-life balance, but I am conscientious of it to make sure that I pursue it to the best of my ability. Life is short and life is long, right? So just enjoying your everyday and your youth. Listen, just yesterday I was 18 years old, and and now I'm like, moving towards way far away from that. So I say that to say that enjoy yourself, work hard and play hard, work and rest, work on outside things and work on interior things. It's important for introspective alignment, for extrospective excellence, right? So you need to just be good inside, and that comes with work-life balance. So I do believe in it 100%. That whole culture of hustle mentality 24/7 forever. I'm not, listen, that's temporary. That's not sustainable over time. And so just, yes, I do believe in it. And again, I forgot the second part of the question, so I'll let someone else jump in.
I think a really important quote that I always think about, Audre Lorde said that taking care of yourself is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation. And we have to always lead with that, where you have to really take time as an individual to follow what you need as a person. Everyone's needs are different. Some people are energized by being social settings, other people are energized by being alone. So just listen to what you need as a person. Let yourself say no. If you don't want to do something, say no. That is paramount. But in order to sustain the work, you need to sustain yourself. Just like Sarita said, you are the most important thing that you're going to work on. You need to create that balance so you can have a life outside of just working, and you can really funnel that experience into your work even more so. And I do think that was the question, to keep it separate. I think they're intricate and intertwined in a way, because when you're an artist, your whole existence is a piece of art in a way, right? Because everything that happens to you, everything you experience facilitates your work indirectly or directly. So it is separate in terms of taking that time separate, but it does filter through.
They've said everything I've had to say, but I would say know yourself, right? Like get to know yourself, fall in love with yourself. You are going to be there for you more than anybody else is going to be there for you. So in saying that, right, knowing if you like to party a lot, right, maybe New York or LA might not be the place for you, right? Because it might be too many distractions. Or knowing that if you like nature and that you like being in the outdoors, maybe Baltimore might not be the place for you, right? Knowing yourself in the ways that your environment and the environments that you foster and the environments that you're going to live in, those play a big, big, big part in your work and life balance.
Great. And that actually, there's one question from Sarah in the chat that is kind of along the same lines, but maybe we could go a little bit deeper about dealing with prioritizing mental health. Sarah, I'm not quite sure. It says when art is too art, when art is too art to do, how do you keep being creative? Are there specific things that you do to prioritize your mental health?
Too hard. That's what she meant. She wrote.
Oh, too hard. Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and go first. I think prioritizing over the course of time, I've learned how to prioritize myself above everything else, because I think before I used to have this mentality of like, try to push through it. It's fine. Like, and that's not the case for some or most people. I think when I'm going through a low, I need to allow myself to go through the low and just lay down if that's what I need. And that allows me to kind of recenter myself. And when it comes to being creative, I think it is so valuable to have a foundation of, I guess, references or research, and not to make it very like structural and conceptual, but when you know what your work is about and what you want to say, you can have these reference images that you can recycle and use all the time. So if you're not in the mood to make something particularly new or innovative, you can always fall back on those things that you have, those staple pieces, and you can play around with them, whether it is going to be a piece that is going to hold up and you want to show people, or it's something just for practice. Having something that you can rework even if it's scanning your own work and playing around with that. Don't feel afraid to reuse old work, and just play with whatever you have. Don't feel like you always need to be making something new, because you can use facets of other pieces that you've made in the past.
I wanted to mention continue on something that Claudia said in the previous question about saying no. I had a really hard time doing that. I find myself to be just ambitious, and I think, oh my God, if I say no to this opportunity, like Skip said before, we don't ever know what may come from it. And so this mentality I had was I was overexhausting that, and I would say yes to many things. The older I get, man, I'm telling you, the bolder I get. I'm like, does it fall in one of my buckets? So I have priority buckets in this back. So I had to say, these are my priority buckets for this season of my life. It might change, come next year. It might change come in the summer, but these are my 5 buckets. If it does not fall into one of these 5 buckets, the answer is no. And so now I've come to say, oh man, okay, how do I tell people no in a professional way? I'm like, man, thank you for keeping me in mind with this. I'm hoping that on the next time that, and I have it already, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I actually had to write out ways to say no to still keep that connection super good and still happening. I'm so happy you kept me in mind. I'm flattered that at the time, currently, and when not with a lot of explanation. You don't tell people that you don't feel good or that you're overwhelmed or this, that, and the other. Just tell it, keep it short, to the point, professional. I think that has helped me with my mental health, as far as just like calm down. Listen, is this at the time? Does it fall in my buckets? Have 5 buckets at a time. No, it does not. All right, let's say no. Look at the list of the ways that because I made a list, a document on how to tell people no, right? And I look at it, I said, which one fits the best? Copy, paste, email, goodbye, move on with your life, So I think that's one way that I have been able to prioritize my mental well-being by just minimizing the amount of things that I pursue at the time, and make sure that the things I pursue are just really valuable to the season I'm in at the moment.
I love this. So once again, goes back to like knowing yourself, right? I'm moody, bipolar by default, right? Like I'm always either really, really excited or really, really like don't want to deal with anyone. There's a reason why I live in the middle of nowhere. But just knowing that it is okay to take a break, and that taking a break doesn't mean like sitting at home and doing nothing, right? Like my other passion is music. I like to DJ. So as long as I'm fostering that other part of me, that other creative part of me, and I'm allowing myself to like detach myself from the academic art and the more graphic design stuff and having to deal with clients, all of those things, keeping in mind like, yes, you can take a break, but knowing that that break ends and that the break doesn't last forever. So limiting yourself, like, okay, I'm not gonna make art for an entire week, but that means come Sunday, I'm making a to-do list about everything. And even if it's overwhelming, I have that break to sort of prepare myself to be overwhelmed again. And then I thrive in being overwhelmed. Like, unfortunately, I like push myself to that exhaustion, but it gets to the point of like, you have to know yourself and you have to know what fuels you, what pushes you, and things along those lines.
That's awesome. So thank you. This is so great. And of course, we're almost out of time. This goes so fast. So I just want to make sure, Carrie, I don't know if there's anything that we were missing, a question that we're missing, or if there's anything that the panel would like some last words, something that we missed or something that you really wanted to make sure that we talked about before we start to sign off here.
Yeah, I think in terms of questions, we've hit the majority. I anticipate that students might be reaching out as follow-up. especially considering watching how the chat continues to grow and this sort of thing. I wonder though, if there's anything from the panel that you haven't had a chance to share, or for emerging artists, something you wish you had known in their shoes, or just final thoughts or that sort of thing.
I just want to say really quickly, especially since Skip mentioned having other interests and being a DJ as well. When you're an artist, sometimes it feels like there's no room for anything else. That I have definitely felt that in the past, that like as an artist, I have to commit solely to this. But you are allowed to learn new things and divide your time and do different things. You're a multifaceted human being. So even though heart is at the forefront of your being and what you love to do, you are also allowed to have other interests and explore and learn new things.
Yeah, and I would also like to add that on top of community, on top of networking, collaboration is mostly at the forefront of a lot of art, especially as we're moving further into the more tech world. You have people working in teams, you have startup groups, you have a lot of things happening. So throughout grad school, I was working on a project that took 2 years, but it paid off. I ended up making a book based off of my art, and I worked with a writer and all these little cool things, right? So meeting people, and you don't just have to collaborate with other artists. You could collaborate with writers, you could collaborate with musicians, you could collaborate with anyone who you want in the world, whether it's a psychiatrist, whether it's a therapist. You can do multiple things. It just doesn't have to be solely you're the only person creating. That is another way to foster community, to foster network, to make sure that you just don't go crazy in your own studio and end up trying to bite someone's ear off.
Love that, Skip. Thank you. That was awesome. Yes.
And then I'll close off with just capitalizing on any opportunity. It's amazing that the art department is putting these type of things together. I'm not sure how often it happens, but if I were you, I would be invested having my camera on. I'd make sure, hey, this is me, reach out. You need networks from all, as Skip and Claudia mentioned, like from different industries or it doesn't necessarily have to be so, specifically aligned with exactly what you do, but just capitalizing on these opportunities to grow your network. I mean, they're literally doing the work for you. They're bringing them right to your door. So just really engaging. And of course, I'm sure you guys are listening, but how do you then capitalize on that to the next level? If everybody had their cameras off, I'd be the only one with mine on, so that I can make sure those people know who I am, so that when I reach out to them, I'm already connected. I was engaged. I was present. I encourage you to, boss up. I mean, come out of your comfort zone. It's not comfortable, but you know what? At the end of the day, Susie Bake Oven, whoever that may be judging you, it doesn't matter. Coming up a few moments later, it doesn't matter. The judgment doesn't matter. So I just want to encourage you guys to just bold up in any way possible.
Can I add my 2 cents here?
Yes, please.
I just want to say that because I happen to have worked with all 3 of these very successful people, I can tell you, I saw that fire and passion and determination to figure it out and put the work in. From the beginning, it was there, and it wasn't always an easy job, but I'm going to point to several things people said. The know thyself, number 1. And then, Sarita, she always had to try to have plans. And you must have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, you won't succeed. If you don't know where you're going, if you're not trying to figure out where you're going, you're not going to get anywhere. So to me, all these are strengths, right? But it takes a while for us to cobble it together. Claudia, passionate, Claudia would work without me asking. She'd come in, you ask someone for one thing, she'd bring in 12. That's the type of, you do it because you have to, and and you'll figure out a way to do it, but you do have to know thyself, be truthful, plan, put the work in. And then you do also have to kind of figure out how to take that break, because you don't want to get a total burnout, but there will be times where you'll just feel like, wow. But that sometimes happens, right? So I'm very proud of all of you, but I saw it. I'm not surprised, not surprised. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. And just to run off of that, I always say, you know what, goals without planning become daydreams.
That's
Like,
right. Yeah.
you know, just put something together. Plans don't always pan out, but it gives you the opportunity to pivot much quicker. Things change, right? But at least you have some kind of roadmap. And thank you, Lydia, for such a great just shout out. And it was really amazing to work with you all. And Liz, thank you for reaching out. And it was a pleasure to meet Skip and Claudia and Carrie, and hi Lauren for being here also. I didn't get to say hello and meet you in person, formally, but thank you all so much.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback and say thank you for having me. This is a lovely, wonderful panel to be a part of. I love the diversity of the panel. That just warms my heart in another way. Thank you, Lauren, for the questions. Thank you for showing up. Thank you, Carrie and Liz, for putting this together and asking me to come. And Lillian, thank you for your support unconditionally.
Yes, thank you so much. You are all amazing, and it's been such a pleasure to speak alongside such wonderful artists and people, and all of your words have been so touching and moving, and I'm just really glad and fortunate to be here. Thank you.
You are all wonderful, wonderful people. Thank you so much. You make our time here, even though you're all in different parts of the world now and you're doing your thing, you come back home and you just make everything just so much brighter. So thank you so much for being here, really, from the bottom of my heart. I so much appreciate all of you. So we are out of time, unfortunately, but everyone that signed up for our talk today, we have your contact information. So if it's okay with you, we encourage students, if there is a pressing question that they have for you that wasn't addressed today, if they can reach out to you, that would be wonderful. And we will provide a recording of the talk today in case somebody wasn't able to be here today. But I just want to say thank you again so much for your time and your generosity for being here today. Thank you, Lillian. And thanks for chiming in. And Lauren, too, thank you so much. And Carrie, was there anything else? Any last things?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for making my day better. I always feel so much, I'm so inspired. I'm so impressed, and just thank you for being you and for sharing your time with us, everybody, but especially our panelists. So thank you. Appreciate you.
All right. So with that, I'll say goodbye. And like I said, we'll have a recording and we'll send it out to everybody. We'll also put it on our YouTube channel for the department. If you want to direct people to it later, it will be up there for everyone. So thank you. Happy Friday.
Keep in touch.
And take care. Yes, please keep in touch. Bye.